Hi, welcome to Fantasy Turf War, where 64 teams go head-to-head to see who is the ultimate champion. I'm your host, Lauren Hill, and we are so excited for tonight's episode. Before we get started, we have a few things to go over. So we are celebrating our 500th view. Yay! It did happen last week, though, and we're close to 600 now, so we'll celebrate next week again, too. Great job to the whole team for putting this together, and we've got some real momentum behind us now. So we're trying to do something different here at Fantasy Turf War, and if you want to support all of us in trying something new, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and we ask that you share this with all of your friends. It helps us keep the lights on, and we greatly appreciate it. And I'm joined tonight by our usual guests, not guests, suspects. We have Matthew right here.
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah. Hi. How's it going? Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, Matt. Where are you from? What's your other podcast?
I'm sorry, it's been a day. Still
We're
working
all
out
very
the kinks,
tired.
guys. Apologies. Yes. So I am. You can find me at Matthew_on on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. Find me at Locked On Fantasy Baseball. You can find that on Twitter or wherever you may podcast or YouTube. And yeah, that's about me for now until we get into some football.
Yep, and I'm
Awesome.
Cory Bassett, of course, the commissioner of Fantasy Turf War, pushing the buttons in the back, herding the cats, and it's fun. Oh, and
All right.
sorry, that was my fault. All right, say we're learning, but wait, look, it's fun. All right, before we get started, and I got some intros or some live reads to do. So here we go from another message from our friends over at Full Time Fantasy. Dive into a world where fantasy football skills meet unparalleled rewards. Whether you're a rookie or a seasoned pro, Full-Time's tourneys are tailored to challenge, excite, and reward. With league-specific prizes and grand rewards that match your expertise, there's a throne for every champion. Draft from the comfort of your own home, or draft at Circus Stadium Swim in Las Vegas, which is the way to do it. The most amazing draft location on the planet. Don't just say you're good at fantasy football, prove it. Head on over to fantasyturf4.com/contests and sign up today. Signing greatly helps out our channel and helps us keep doing what we do, and your support is greatly appreciated.
All right. So, I guess now that we're rocking and rolling here, thank you for that awesome thing. I guess we should dive into some fantasy football, right? Get some knowledge, start talking some tight end ADP, try to break down top 10. Maybe if we can kind of blast past it and maybe talk about who we're all targeting by the end. How do you guys feel about the landscape of tight end this season?
I think it's really exciting, honestly. I think you have your veteran players that have been playing for a long time. Then I think we have a lot of potential, especially with like the draft. And no hate, no shade to me being biased here, but I'm really excited about seeing how Brock Bowers does. I got to watch him at UGA and was easily our best player. Um, and now I'm just excited to see what he'll do on like an NFL playscape and all that. So I'm excited.
Yeah, is this the same
Sweet.
UGA where Butker went? And
Hmm? Say that
is this
again.
is the
No.
same? No, you sure it's not the same? Okay.
I mean, it would be a hell of a lot better first round draft pick than a kicker would be. But
Yeah.
I personally, I don't think I would take Brock Bowers in the first round, but that's just my
I mean,
choice there. But
to
I'm
be
sure many UGA fans will be doing that, and kudos to them, but not me.
I mean, to be fair, your judgment's a little skewed. We all listened to your interview. We know what you did in the first round, so just saying.
Yes, this is true. This is true. I've learned from my ways, mostly.
All right, Matt, who do we got at the top of the list?
All right. So oddly enough, this has been a wild year, and I feel like this is going to be the most volatile pick at the tight end position. And Sam Laporta is going off the board based off of current ADP on Fantasy Pros, half point PPR scoring, as the number one tight end on the season, and as pick 26 overall, which I kind of find a little baffling. Yes, he had a fantastic rookie season, but the one thing that really sticks out with Sam Laporta is honestly the touchdown numbers. He had 10 in his rookie year, which is absolutely significant and fantastic. But normally with tight ends going into their, second season that have a high touchdown rookie season, there's some touchdown regression that comes into play. Even though he probably is the number 2 on that team, with Gibbs taking a bigger role and obviously being the pass maestro of reception in the running back position for the Detroit Lions. It's just one of those things where I think that he's going to see some positive regression in catching the ball and possibly some receptions for in the end zone that are going to take away from Laporta, and I just don't foresee him being worth the draft price. Other than that, he is a fantastic player, but at the end of the day, I look at him and I go, man, that's not only a really high draft price for a guy that's only really did it once, but at the same time, I really just I can't see myself picking a tight end that early at all. So in all my drafts that I'm going to be in, I'm not touching Laporta with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, it's interesting,
Oh.
right? Because they're saying 26 pick overall, so we'll kind of couch it with 12 team and 14 and 16 perspectives, even 10 perspectives, right? So
Yeah.
for the people at home, add 10, add 12, add 14, 16, depending on what your league is when you're taking this advice. But to just look at like a standard 12 team league, you're saying you're going to pick him in the second round, right at the beginning of the third round. That is a very high price for a tight end, and like you said, with some unknown quantities there with touchdown regression, I don't know if one I don't know if he has the recognition on name alone that's justifying the price as to who we're going to talk about later, of course. And then it's a very risky thing. So I'm almost curious what drives the decision to put him in that spot. But I agree at a third round pick, I would not be picking him up at all.
No, I agree, honestly, but I think he's so high up the list because of the stats that he produced last year. I mean, like, just reading them off, the 86 receptions, 889 yards, 10 touchdowns, like you said, like, that's kind of crazy numbers for a tight end in general. And again, that being his first season, it is very, like, some people peak their rookie season, some people don't, and they go off of that. I don't know. He's one of the players that when I said I was excited, I'm excited to see what he does because, like Matt said, there's like Gibbs on the team as well that could be as good as he was last year, if not better. I don't know. I think he's going to be an exciting player to watch, especially because he's so young.
Yeah.
But
All
yeah.
fair points. I mean, end of the day, it's going to be a high investment for high ceiling, but also possibly a complete total regression where he can also finish as, tight end 10 at the same time. Just
Yeah.
so I just sophomore slump is a real thing. So
Yep.
just be careful when drafting Sam Laporta. He's great talent, going to have a great career, but maybe not this year. But let's move on. I think we spent enough time on a guy that I think everybody and their mother is kind of aware of. And talk about Taylor Swift's boyfriend, because he no longer has an identity, and that's Travis Kelce. He's coming off the board at pick 35 overall, the second tight end off the board. And, it's a very steep difference, about 9 picks difference. And I don't even know if I'm drafting Travis Kelce this high. I mean, if you guys watched our show for the last couple of weeks, you kind of gathered where I like to draft my tight ends and quarterbacks. Yes, much later in drafts, but you know, normally like you might want to take the cheat code in Travis Kelce, but I think the days of Travis Kelce being the super elite tight end one might be like behind us. He's still going to probably be like a top 5, top 6 because there is a significant drop off in production at the tight end position. But I don't think he's the number one anymore. And for one reason and one reason only, they don't care about the regular season. They're going to win games as a whole as the Kansas City Chiefs. Yep. They're going to save him for the playoffs. You saw that kind of last year where like he kind of was slow throughout the whole season, and then as they got closer, he started lighting up the world. And then the playoffs, he went full ham in the end zone. Now, he had five touchdowns in total last season and only was able to come out with like 172 points, which is significantly lower. The year before, 261. Year before that, 216. 2020, 260. And the list goes on. He's only had like the last, 5 years, he's had over 200 fantasy points. And 3 of those years over 240. He's no longer that super elite tight end. I kind of just like am backing off him because I have a feeling you're going to be paying tight end 2 price for the guy that's going to finish as 5'6".
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, right? And I say that a lot, so I'm gonna have to change my words here. But what I find interesting is when you have, because from a practical point, and that's usually how I approach these kinds of things, is that you're essentially going to come across in the draft. You're going to have a pick to make between Laporta and Kelce, assuming that it goes in accordance with your ADP. And if you get the choice, if you're already picking a tight end in the 3rd round, are you going to take a chance with Laporta? Or if you have the name recognition with Kelce, and there's a little bit of bias in there, of course, because he's had years of production, and I do think he's a solid tight end. Which one are you going to go with? And it really just depends. Are you going to, play the risk adverse thing where you're going to go with the known quantity, or you're going to pull the trigger on, Travis Kelce and say, look, he might be degrading, but he's at least guaranteed production. I think in an offense that's doing stuff, so I'll take my chances there. And then it also goes into the why are you picking a tight end in the 3rd? And if you're already trying to, buck the strategy of the rest of the draft, mess with people, then, maybe that plays into it too. So it just depends. But if I come across it in a draft and I have a pick between Laporta and Kelce, I'm probably going to pick Kelce just because I know what I'm getting there, and I'm okay with a little bit more regression and a little bit more of a solid floor there than the potential ceiling out of Laporta.
No, honestly, I agree because doing background research on Kelce is like doing background research on like Peyton Manning in a way, because it's like his profile is just pages and pages and pages and pages of records that he's beaten, and this many yards here and this many yards there, and he's beaten Tony Gonzalez doing this and whatnot. But then I also thought about how a lot of people that play fantasy, at least I've been in leagues with some people that have no idea who anyone is. And like one of my aunts is an example. She played, and 2 years in a row she had the 1st round draft pick, and she drafted Patrick Mahomes just because she knew who he was. And I think there's going to be, and I know we talked about Taylor Swift's boyfriend, I think there's going to be a big spike in girls that maybe play fantasy football because their boyfriend plays it, or they need another player, or something like that, or like they don't know what's going on really, but it's more like they want to play because it's a fun activity. I think Kelce is going to be drafted a lot higher in a lot of leagues than he should be because of that, just because people know his name.
Yeah, and it would be one thing if it was like back in the Gronkowski days, where if you picked up Gronk as a wide receiver, you were still in a pretty good spot. But I would not do the same approach from our perspective. I wouldn't take the same approach to Kelce as I would have back in the day with Gronk. But I was also, you know, caveat that with I was also the guy who like deliberately screwed with the draft just to mess with people. So there's always a little grain of salt in there. So
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey still will carry the name value even for fantasy because of all the previous years. Everybody's still going to live in the glory days. So, it's one of those things where I'm kind of just out there and I'm saying beware of the possible, decline of Travis Kelce's eliteness. But let's move on. Let's talk about the next guy in the queue here, the Mr. Trey McBride. Apparently, the new hotness going off the board at pick 44 overall, and he plays for the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm not really sold on this dude, in all honesty, and it's only because you know he kind of came out of nowhere. There was nobody else to really throw to on that team, and yes, there is nobody really else except for obviously the new addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. Jones is somebody that can field a little bit, but McBride should be pretty much like powdered with you know targets and receptions at this point, and that's probably what's really driving up his cost. Last year, he had 106 targets, 81 receptions, and had 825 yards. But here's the part that I don't like is 3 touchdowns. Now, yes, Marquise Hollywood Brown was out for a good chunk of that season, and on top of that, he was really the only show in town outside of James Conner. And is he going to be able to take that step forward, be a dominant presence in the end zone, or is it still going to be pumped down the middle of the James Conner, or is you know Harrison Jr. going to step up and be that red zone threat that they want him to be and just be their number one everything? So, what you need for him to be able to live up to this draft price essentially is obviously score more touchdowns. Now, that's not a predictive stat, but the thing is, based off of what he did last year, all he really needs to do is get about 7 or 8 touchdowns for you to feel really good about your draft pick. Me personally, if I'm spending the 44th overall pick on a tight end, I'm gonna want like number one upside or at least you know, a top 4 floor, and that's where I kinda draw the line, and I don't know if his floor is this yet, and it's too risky for me, too rich for my blood, and if he finishes with a similar finish, you're just gonna pretty much turn around and go, "Okay, cool. There was 7 other guys that had the same amount of stats that he did and points, and I coulda got him way later in the draft and got a lot more value at multi starting positions versus the onesie position of the tight end."
yeah, that's a good point. And name recognition has a lot to do with how you draft, especially if you're on the fly or having to make adjustments, things like that to your strategy, whatever it may be. And I think we're getting into that range of tight ends now where you just don't know where it's going to end up. And so, the next guy on the list, I'm kind of, I'd probably be more inclined to go with the next guy on the list than this guy. Like I said, it's I don't like the scenario he was in, and I definitely have more reliability with our next guy.
Yeah, no,
100%.
I mean, I agree. I had the same thought of looking at his stats of being like, I literally wrote down solid choice depending on how your league is separated with points because the touchdowns is disappointing that
Yeah.
he had so many yards and couldn't be found in the end zone. Um,
It's a
yeah, I
liability.
mean, yeah, and I think it's just, I don't know, maybe he needs to have a little quarterback chit chat or something. I don't know, but like, I think he's a solid choice for maybe a backup. For maybe,
Yeah, but that's the thing is he won't be available as a tight end,
yeah,
your second chance at
exactly.
a tight end kind of thing. So, yeah, you're right though. Maybe like take the quarterback to dinner, say something nice to
Yeah,
him before the
something
game,
he needs to make some
a
connections
couple extra
because
targets.
something's not happening there. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what, Corey, it was a great segue into our next guy of Mark Andrews. And you know what, he's probably the biggest steal of the draft coming off the board at pick 49 overall, fourth tight end off the board. And honestly, like, yes, he had an incredible, devastating injury last year to take him out of the rest of the season. But as of knowledge today, he should be ready for, you know, week one. And that unless that changes, I'm a okay with it. He has always been a top 5, top 3 tight end and has always been fantastic. You go back to 2022 when he played, 15 games. He had what? This is the wildest stat lines too. He had 113 targets. He had 73 receptions. He had 847 yards. He had 5 touchdowns. He also ran in a little bit. But the thing is, though, the dude just like is a machine. And, you know, that's like a kind of a good baseline. That's better than most tight ends. And that's like the floor. And I'm kind of okay with it, especially with the draft price. It's at the end of a tier. But then he has the ceiling of like 2021, where he played all 17 games. He had 154 targets, 107 receptions. He ended up finishing with 247.6 points that year, finished with 1,300 yards, and had 9 touchdowns. So, like, it's a, floor ceiling play. And I'm okay with the floor because I understand that there's a massive ceiling, and the likelihood of the ceiling is pretty good this year. The additions of Derrick Henry, Flowers taking a step forward. Nobody cares about Bateman. He's never going to be good. And just the team in general with the new offensive coordinator, I think in year 2 of this system is going to be fantastic. And plus, Lamar Jackson has the ball in his hand, and he distributes that ball all day to Mark Andrews as long as he's in the game. So Mark Andrews is a smash pick and my favorite pick at the position in general. And if I don't pick him, then we wait a long time because nobody else has really worked it at that point.
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. I brainstormed, putting the show together. You brainstorm what you're going to put everything on there, and Mark Andrews is one of the first tight ends I put on there with obviously Kelce, and I think we mentioned this last week, if not the week before, about how the Ravens kind of have all the pieces together this year with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and so I think the best thing you can do for any sort of receiver is to give him a solid running back and just ease the pressure on all fronts. And so it's good for everybody. And I think this year I'm kind of all in on the Ravens, which is a little weird to say, but I like what I see out of Baltimore, and I think Mark Andrews has a good shot at putting up some points. And like I said, the ceiling is there. And if you're looking at him or the guy we were talking about before, McBride, I don't think. You're talking about 3 touchdowns versus 9 touchdowns. That's a lot of points, and I would rather go for the guy that's proven to put up some points than take a risk on a guy that hasn't put up points. And like you said, if I don't pick him up, I think we're getting to that point where, outside of maybe George Kittle, just because he's done me well over the last few years, I'm probably just going to sit on it and wait.
I hear you. I mean, when it comes, he is the best option, and I completely agree that if you're waiting for him, you're just gonna know, and you probably just reach for him a little bit, and it wouldn't be a bad pick. But fantastic take on everybody's front. I think we just move on here. Let's talk about Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills. Rookie season was pretty nice. Had a great college year before coming into the NFL, and was able to follow it up this year in the pros with 91 targets, 73 receptions, caught 80% of his catches of his targets, which is fantastic. Finished with 673 yards, had 2 touchdowns, unfortunately, but this is a good stepping stone, right? Rookie tight ends usually take a little bit of time to develop, but for his purposes, this is a little bit different, and that's because there's a lot of vacated targets. Stephon Diggs has left. You have a rookie wide receiver coming into it, and there's nobody else really there, even with Gabe Davis leaving, that really has that connection with Josh Allen. So this is a true opportunity for Kincaid to really just take advantage of, having a full season under his belt with his quarterback and hopefully earning that trust throughout last season and building that up during the offseason to then be that target. If he walks away with 120 targets and the fact that he caught 80% of his targets last year, that's going to be really nice. And if that could translate also into red zone targets, this is where he gets really interesting. So Kincaid has some serious upside for next year that I think we should really, really, really take a look at. He's an interesting one, very risky still because he's coming off the board at what, pick 52 overall. It's still a little rich. It's not like a Mark Andrews where you have the kind of the guaranteed kind of floor ceiling play. But if you had to scratch an early scratch off and take that kind of risk At this point, if you're going to do it, he's probably your best name in terms of it because you got guys like, Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts, even George Kittle that you don't really know what their outcomes are going to be. And okay, if I'm going to do it, I might as well kind of go with the number one quarterback in the league. And I'll probably be able to get with the one that has the most vacated targets, then see if they could take advantage of it.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah,
Lauren, you
no,
got it?
I agree. I with the exact same. Just I guess the tight ends. There are a couple in this whole list that it's like their receiving yard receptions and receiving yards and everything are very, very high. And then you have their touchdowns. You're like, what happened? Like I said, you might need to just have a little chit chat with your quarterback. I literally wrote down good choice. Just pray Josh Allen finds him in the end zone more because obviously the Bills have potential. They've had potential for a long time. There's just pieces that fall apart once they get to postseason. Um, I don't know. I wrote down he played 16 games. Just let him cook. I think he needs. I think he needs some time, and maybe this year is it, and hopefully it is for him.
Yeah, and that's a fair point, right? It's like he's got the opportunity, he's got the talent, and look, volume is everything in fantasy football. Someone has to pick up the targets from Diggs and everyone else that left. So like someone's got to pick it up, and I think it might be him. And if you believe that, you should draft him. If you are hesitant, then you might be a year late, and that's okay too. But it really just depends. But I think yeah, there's obviously talent with Josh Allen. He's got to get the ball to somebody, and so it may just be him.
Yeah, I think in general, also it wouldn't be a bad pick in general, just because the Bills, like you said, are going to create points some way somehow, rather than like I don't know, like the Falcons, like Kyle Pitts. I think that could be a hitter, definitely a hit or a miss, um, just because of the team itself. But the Bills themselves are they're good. So yeah,
Yeah, completely agreed. It's a great segue into our next guy, which is Kyle Pitts, and we can kind of have that
yeah,
conversation of, you know, who do you think could be more successful? And you kind of look at it and go, well, Kyle Pitts is stepping into a whole new situation. He actually has a quarterback to throw him the ball with Kirk Cousins now. So, you're getting that upgrade. You've seen, Kirk Cousins go ahead and support, Justin Jefferson, made was it Addison look fantastic last year when Hockenson
hmm
stepped on the team. He made him look great. Like, hopefully this translates, to the Atlanta Falcons, and the Achilles injury doesn't really, hamper him as well. So as long as Cousins can kind of take that step forward, bring them to the next step, I think Pitts could kind of be that guy that might be able to have at least somewhat of a decent ceiling, but also a good floor because the dude can literally catch anything that's thrown his way as long as it's catchable. The problem is the amount of catchable passes that went his way through his whole NFL career has been absolutely atrocious. So I think that we should automatically just see a boost in that. And hopefully some targets are going to be, rise. Even though he got 90 last year, he just didn't have a lot of catchable targets. So he was only able to catch about 59%. But I guarantee if you look at, catchable versus uncatchable, 40% of those are going to be uncatchable. In addition, he still managed to still put up 667 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. And it's weird, though. He's tight end size, tight end hands, big boy, but he moves like a wide receiver. He has all the tangibles to be a really good tight end. I want to say wide receiver, and but he is a tight end. He literally is just like Travis Kelce, just like a whole decade younger. So, I see Kyle Pitts having a really bright future. It's really interesting to see what it is, but he is the most volatile in terms of all these names at tight end at this point because it could be super high ceiling, but also really low floor that we've experienced for the last 3 years, and that would just mean that Atlanta Falcons would just take another flop or just decide to run the ball intensely, and then he doesn't get the ball at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I haven't usually drafted Pitts and had a lot of stock unless it was like a flyer kind of scenario. He's had the talent. I'm not really sure why it never really clicked to get the production going to get him into that next tier. Like you said, he's built like, he's a big boy but runs like a receiver, and that should be great production wise. And I don't know what it is that just doesn't seem to jive on a fantasy scale. But it's something's got to give, right? Like he's got to have a chance in I would hope that it happens this year, but I'm a little hesitant. But when I get down to this range, I might pick him up. It just depends.
I mean, I agree. I don't really have a here nor there opinion on Kyle Pitts. I mean, I'm from Atlanta, so I feel like I should, but the Atlanta Falcons hurt my feelings every year. So I get in the mindset that I'm like, oh, it's a rebuilding year. Every year is a rebuilding year, but that's okay. Again, I hope this year is his year. I think obviously he has a lot of potential being who he is and the stats that he has. Um, yeah, I hope he does good things, and I hope he is good in the draft stock. But
Yeah, I mean, I hope his favorite numbers aren't 28-3 because that won't really do well for him as a Falcon. Um, no, this is too soon.
Mm,
We're too soon.
it's too soon. It's too soon. It's
that was a
still too
very rough
soon.
one.
When
I had to work for that
that
joke.
was one of that was one of the worst nights of my life. I remember exactly where I was and where I should have been. And the funny thing, a side note, I won't spend time on this, but the that game, me and my family were convinced at halftime. We were like, we're gonna go to Dick's Sporting Goods and get our Super Bowl shirts.
Yeah,
We don't even
just
need to stay for the second half. We were gonna leave, and I'm so glad we didn't because the embarrassment that would have ensued. Yeah.
yeah. It always reminds me of how they make both products, right, of both teams being the champion, and then they donate it to some poor unfortunate
Oh yeah,
person kind
I'm
of thing.
sure people are wearing the Super Bowl shirts. Yeah, somewhere in this world.
Someone's living with a very
And I hope
alternate
they're
version of
happy. I hope
history.
their outcome of it, they think that the Falcons won and it's okay. There you go.
Yeah. No, I joke. My Raiders haven't been in the Super Bowl in a long time, so it's been 21 years. That hurts to say because that means one, I'm old, and two, it's been a while. So it's probably better that we just keep moving on to Jacksonville and Evan Ingram, huh?
Sorry, I do not know how any of that feels. I've had 2 in the last decade, so I can't really say.
Oh, it's been great having you on the show, man. It's a real.
Ooh.
It's been maybe a little bit more than a decade, but it still feels nice. But anyway, not to rub it in anymore. Let's talk about Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is one that I did not see coming because he is an ex-Giant and he couldn't catch a single thing when playing for the Giants, but then he goes to Jacksonville and starts catching everything. Go figure, right? You know, I just he's interesting. He is a good talent. He does move. He is shifty. There's a lot of good tangible things with when it comes to Evan Ingram. And 173.3 points last year speaks volumes. And 143 targets last year also speaks volumes of his relationship with Trevor Lawrence. And in fact, he was able to come down with 114 receptions. Great. Right under 1,000 yards at 963. Just the touchdown numbers are really ugly. And I want to see more of that. Now, with Calvin Ridley leaving and, just Gabe Davis, entering, I don't know if like we're gonna see we're gonna see where the sorry, let me take that back. I'd like to see where the distribution of targets are gonna go. Is it gonna go to Gabe Davis? Is it gonna start heading more towards Evan Ingram? Is somebody else going to step up? Is Christian Kirk just going to be the guy that just hogs all the targets like crazy? I don't know. But I would think that, the rapport that Evan Ingram has with Lawrence should equate to the same amount of targets at least, but hopefully more red zone targets are thrown into the equation now that, you don't have Calvin Ridley wasting your time down there. So let's see what happens. Gabe Davis is a touchdown machine, but at the same time, he loves to disappear, whereas Evan Ingram could show up and be the hero. Who knows? We might not even be calling them the Jacksonville Jaguars. It might be the London Jaguars by the end of the season. So I just, my hands go up with that whole team. Evan Ingram is somebody that I'm going to pretty much pass on in all the drafts and just kind of let him fall into somebody else's lap.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where it's like, I'll pass. Like not my not my taste, and there's not much else I need to say about it. Like if you get to that point, like I said, depending on how much research you do and going into the preps of these drafts and all that stuff, like he's one that if I do any research, I know I don't want any stock in it, and then if I have done the research, that also means I know who else is in the market at his range, and that's the people I want to pick up, and I'm probably just going to skip right over him. I would probably aim lower on a tight end or just pick a different position altogether that round, and kind of that whole throwing the draft strategy for everyone mentality of I'm going to go the other way just because I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I think I feel like it's kind of like a 50-50 thing because he is entering his 8th year in the NFL. And I feel like at that point, you're a veteran, I feel like at that point. And just looking at all his past stats and just like Matt said, coming to Jacksonville, he's done a hell of a lot better than he did in the Giants. But the 114 receptions really stuck out to me. Because that's a hell of a lot, and he only got 4 touchdowns. So I don't know. I think like I probably wouldn't draft him in the first, honestly, probably like 6 rounds, just because of past things. And I have heard his name for a long time, kind of like we were talking about, like name likeness and whatnot. But I could see him being one of those players where it's like he just has a boom in the first 2 weeks and everybody's drafting him and then he's 99% taken. Like I could see that happening. But I don't see him being on everybody's drafted in everybody's league kind of thing. Maybe as like, I don't know, I guess because everybody does have to have a tight end. So he will be, but I wouldn't take him basically is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a fair point, right? I think when you look at these kinds of players in this range, and you mentioned he has just that many targets, but not a lot of touchdowns to go with. So I could see him as someone to pick up in a bye week. I need to stream somebody because I know that the receptions are going to be there, so I can count on a few points at least in a PPR league. So I can get something there, but you're not really counting on the touchdown. Although if it happens, it's good, but you don't really expect it when you get them. But you have to know that going in that the numbers might not be there where you want them, and you might have missed the train at this point on the tight ends if this is your first option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, everybody's got to draft a tight end, and sadly, he will be drafted in every league, being that he's the 7th one coming off the board.
Right.
But he's not your favorite option. So like, this is where like we all wish he would just be a waiver wire guy because we don't feel it. But the thing is, when you're at this point in ADP and looking at tight end options, it's just like, okay, the difference between him and the guy going at pick 140, there isn't going to be much of a difference. The only thing is that Evan Ingram has a guaranteed target share, and that's kind of what's putting him driving up his price to be this high. It sucks to own him, but at the same time, there is worse options, right? He has a floor.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when sorry.
No, go ahead. You have a point to make, please.
I don't know what it was anymore. No, just kidding. So I was going to say when it's a very good perspective to take on it, right? Because even in a 12 team, someone's going to draft him. So you're going to draft him if you have to. You might not be happy about it, but he will be picked up. And I don't know, unless his production drops over the year, he might not be someone that ever sees the waiver wire, just because if he's putting up decent numbers every week, you're not going to dump him. So, if you have to pick him up, there's worse options. If you do pick him up, there's better options. Like there's no real way around it. It's just kind of a gut call at that point. So yeah, it's a good perspective.
Yeah, and it's crazy too to see that he's being drafted over George Kittle, who's our next guy in ADP at the number 8 tight end going off the board at pick 74. George Kittle does play for the San Francisco 49ers, and yes, there's a lot of reception options out there between obviously Christian McCaffrey, even though he's a running back. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and then they drafted a rookie who is also a slot receiver, which I can't remember his name at the moment. But there's a lot of passing options that could take away from George Kittle's mouth that would kind of render him not as valuable as normal. But the thing is, he always finds a way. And you look at it, like how consistent he's been last year, even though he had kind of like a lower year for him. He had 56% of the time he was a top 12 tight end, and 43.8% of the time he was a top 6. That's pretty good consistency numbers, and he was able to really just be out there and be a valuable target, valuable player for you week in and week out. He still managed to have over 1,000 yards, even though he only had 6 touchdowns. He still had 65 receptions and had 90 targets. Now, that's all variable because you look at him, and like the year before this in 2022, he had 11 touchdowns, but 765 yards, finished nearly the same. Literally, he only had zero point 0.2 more points this year than last. And last year, you were pretty happy with him by the end of the year, not the start of the year. And then in 2021, he played 14 games and had 162 points and 910 yards with 6 touchdowns. It's very variable because of all the options that, Brock Purdy could throw to. And I personally, if I'm choosing between the last three guys we talked about, that's Evan Ingram and Kyle Pitts and then George Kittle, I'll probably pick Kittle over the two of them just based off of the fact that, hey, he's done it so many years in a row. He managed to be a top 12, tight end 56% of the time. And then 43% of the time, he's a top six. I'm all about that. Whereas the other guys haven't really done that. And I'm kind of like, okay, cool. George Kittle's my guy at that point. And it's late enough, too, where I feel comfortable drafting him.
Yeah. Lauren, what you got on him?
No, yeah, I agree. I think George Kittle to me, I don't know if this is y'all are gonna be like, but George Kittle to me, I feel like compares in a way to Travis Kelce in the sense that like the name likeness is very much there, and he has a very, very good social media presence through not only him but his wife. And the fact that I think he's a safe option. Like, it's, if he's still there and you're in the, I don't know, however many rounds where you typically draft, everyone drafts different. I think he's a safe option to go for. Like you said, with the stats that you discussed, like, he's pretty, I can't think of the word, pretty like on the nose with producing points, unless he is hurt, obviously. But like, yeah, the amount of over 1,000 yards last year, he has the most yards, I think, out of any of the tight ends that we've talked about so far. But like you said, there's always going to be another player on the 49ers that could get the ball other than him. Unlike Travis Kelce and the Chiefs, you kind of have, I mean, through the last couple of years, running backs and wide receivers and have just been leaving and being traded and whatnot, and he's been kind of like the staple. I also think George Kittle is a staple. So I don't know. I think I would feel safe having him on my team. If that was my tight end option, I wouldn't, honestly, I wouldn't be worried in the sense of like some of the other guys that we've talked about already that are younger and or coming out of their rookie season where you like don't have enough stats to feel confident and or like safe in that decision. I think that George Kittle is a great safety option.
Yeah, and I think those are good points. For me, when I look at Kittle, I think he's a great value. When I was doing my research for tonight's episode, it was interesting because depending on what ranking list I would look at, he'd either be top 5 or he'd be about where he is on the ADP side. And so it was an interesting take because I think a lot of it goes to what we were talking about in that target share, and that you're either banking on he's going to get vultured down from everybody else that's getting some time, or you're hoping, well, not hoping, you're putting the bet on someone getting hurt and where the target share is going to go up from that point. And so on that side, I do see some upside because as great as Christian McCaffrey is, he is somewhat injury prone, and I'm worried that maybe they overuse him to the point where he has to take some time out. And if that's true, then you could see the target share go up for everybody involved, and that may benefit Kittle just because he is a solid workhorse. He knows, they know what they've got with him. He's been around the system for a while, and so I think that could be good. Yeah, but I would say if you're approaching it on the decision side, do you think someone in the 49ers is going to have to take some time off during the year, or do you think that they're going to stay healthy all year? And if you're betting on them being healthy, the production's probably not going to be there. But like you said, I would still pick him over the last two that we talked about as well, just because he's always been consistent for me. Yeah, and I would just take a known quantity.
Yeah, no, I mean everything you said is fair, and both you two, Lauren. It's just one of those things where like everybody's made out of plexiglass on that team, so somebody is bound to go down, and the production can go up. It's a matter of how long. If somebody has a season-ending injury, the share starts growing for him. And Brandon Ayuk has never been a picture of health. Neither is Deebo Samuel either. So either one of those guys go down, and even touchdown numbers are going up. But
Right, and
great take, guy.
you only have to be
Mhm.
right on any one of those three for that to make sense. So it's not a bad option to go with. As
Right,
much as
and
I
at
hate to
least it's a
say
good
that.
offense. Yeah, and it's a great offense too. They do pass the ball a lot. They do create touchdowns, and they move the ball. It's a great offense. So you kind of want a piece of that, even if it's you know only 20% of the targets, which is still a significant amount.
Yep, fair point. All right, who
All
we
right.
got? We got two more, I think, before we
Yes,
wrap it up today.
yes, sir. We got Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowgirls. Sorry, you will never hear anything nice about a cowboy from me, but I will talk nice about this person at least, Jake Ferguson, for fantasy football wise. I don't play with my team in mind. I play with my mindset of beating my friends and winning some money. So whole point we do this. So Jake Ferguson could possibly be the guy for you. There is nobody else there on that team besides CD Lamb that is going to be commanding targets. Jake Ferguson has an opportunity to grow his target share. He already had 102 targets last year, was able to catch about 71 targets in total. Caught about 70% of all his targets and finished with 761 yards, had 5 touchdowns, and finished with 141 points. Now, that's pretty good for a tight end in general for points. And if he could even get like 25 to 30 more targets, which I believe is out there because the Cowboys do throw the ball, he could seriously benefit from that. Somebody else has to get touchdowns on this team. It's not like they have a great running back there. And CD Lamb is not going to have 27 touchdowns either.
Right.
So where are they going to go? Ferguson has to reap the benefits. He has to get more than 5, and it's not going to be 6. It could definitely be 7, but there's a world and a possibility where he gets 10 to 12 touchdowns, and he's finishing as a top 5 tight end. So Ferguson at this price at what's his ADP again? 85th overall. That is one of the right prices, and probably the last of the Mohegans in terms of guys you pretty much want to walk away with that does not carry a lot of like does not have a super low floor that costs you almost nothing. So Jake Ferguson is one of my favorite targets. I think towards the back of this.
Yeah, same here. For me, I think when I look at the Cowboys, and of course this is biased because everyone hates Cowboys except for the people that don't. 1-star rating, I don't get it. Um, so for me, I look at it like this, right? The Cowboys are probably going to be playing from behind in several games, and they don't have a solid running game, and so they're going to be throwing. And like you said, someone's got to get the ball, and it can't be CeeDee Lamb all the time because when you only have one threat, they protect the threat. So they've got to go to someone else. And so if one of two things are probably going to happen. Either Ferguson is going to step up and produce the numbers because the opportunity is golden for him to do so, or he doesn't, in which case someone else would, or the Cowboys just don't do that well this year. So, either way, I think if you're going to take a chance, this is probably the guy to do it on because the share is going to be there, the time's going to be there. Someone has to fill the void.
No, yeah, I agree. With him going into this being his third year, I like him a little. I like the probability of him doing good a little bit over. Was it Dalton Kincaid? I do think, obviously, I think there are safer options, but just because as well, I think I've determined that all three of us are not fans of the Cowboys. I don't, I don't think you're a fan of the Cowboys unless you're actually a fan. No one's neutral. But I wrote it down as I think that this could be definitely like a growing year for him. That this is either going to be like record breaking year or it's going to be very very similar to what it was last year. But I feel like there are more touchdowns coming. Like Matt said, I feel like with the amount of yards that he produced last year, there's has to be more touchdowns. Um, so yeah, I don't think it's too much of a gamble to draft him on your team, but I do think it's a gamble that of the team that he is on because you literally never know. And like I know everyone's heard this, but every Dallas fan says it's their year, and it usually never is. Last year was pretty good. They went on they did pretty well last year, but
Well,
other
they
than that,
You know why they say that, right? Because their year ends in December every year, and so they forget
Yeah,
about January,
exactly.
February. That's why every year it's a year.
Exactly.
So quick question then for both of you. We'll go Matt first. Actually, we'll go ladies first. Lauren first. So when you're looking at these two players, are you picking up him or are you picking up George Kittle?
I think it's how you're feeling that day. If you had too much sugar in your coffee or whatnot. That's a good question because I think it also depends on who you already have on your team. Because if you're willing to take that little gamble, I think go for it. I also think it depends on what league you're drafting him in. If it's just like a fun little work league, sure. But I feel like George Kittle is more of a safe option, in my opinion. But I think Jake Ferguson is exciting just because, like, Kittle is very, like I said, like, you know what he's going to do most of the time, and he's very, like, on the nose. He will produce the yards and majority not or like will produce at least a couple touchdowns. Um I think it's what you're feeling, but I love to go with the underdog. So I would say Jake, honestly. I think it's just more fun and it is fantasy football. It's supposed to be fun. So there you go.
All right, I like the answer non-answer answer thing, but
There
okay,
you
so
go.
we settled on Ferguson. Matt, what do you got?
So here's the thing, right? So based off of just how my draft strategy always goes into everything, I don't know if I'm going to spend up on George Kittle, even though I like him. And if I really stacked out at the top and I didn't pick a quarterback, and there's nobody really screaming my name, or if I think a quarterback's going to fall, then maybe I'll pick George Kittle. But at the same time, even Jake Ferguson, for instance, they both fall in the line of players that I'd like to draft over him. Like specifically, Jake Ferguson has Ladd McConkey right around him, Jonathan Brooks, Tony Pollard, great running backs that you're getting in the 6th and 7th round. And then even George Kittle, right? He's literally sandwiched between Kyle Murray and Jordan Love. Then you got David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and even Deontay Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins, and even Zamir White. There's a whole long list of guys going around, James Conner, that I'd probably draft over these guys that kind of fill up, your multi-start positions, right? So I can get my RB2 or my RB3 for depth, or my wide receiver 3 or 4 just for depth pieces, and kind of just worry about the onesie positions later. So it's kind of hard for me to do that unless, okay, I feel I'm really good at those positions and I started strong. Hey, okay, let me get that upgrade and have the cheat code of having a high upside tight end. It really just depends on the build at that moment, but 9 out of 10 times I'm probably passing on both.
Okay, I like it. I love the analysis, so I think it's good. I would like if you only had 60 seconds on the clock to make the choice in a draft, I'm probably picking Kittle just because I would be banking on someone getting injured, and that would be probably where I take it. Because if I had a 1 in 3 chance, you know, if I had 3 chances for someone to get injured and my value to go up for my draft position, from relative to where I drafted him at, I would be banking on someone getting hurt because, look, it's a long season. They added a game. Injuries are likely to go up. So I would probably be where I was at if I was doing it on the fly, and then I'd also look at the whole 1 star thing and be like, nah, not this year. So
Fair enough. Do we have time for the last guy?
yeah, we got one more. We don't have much on the league side today, so we can round it out with top 10, and we'll call it a day.
Okay. So it's a quick take. This is the safety net of the position. 95th pick overall. David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. Honestly, the reason why I like him is not because he's going to blow you away on the stat board. He only had about 882 yards last year and 123 targets, which that part is nice. With 6 touchdowns, finished with 160 points. The reason I like him is for one reason and one reason only: his consistency. 62.5% of the time he finished as a top 12 tight end. 31.3% of the time he finished as a top 6, which is a little bit lower. But only 12% of the time did he fall into the tight end 2 category. But then he had his real bust weeks at 25% of the time falling at tight end 3. He is the most consistent out of this guy, out of the lower guys in terms of volatility, where you're getting him almost right at pick 100, where you kind of feel, okay, cool, I could grab him, feel okay, and deal with those bust weeks, because Tight end is super volatile. You're going to have bust weeks no matter what. At least I'm getting 62% of the time of a top 12 return on investment. And whatever for the rest, it's going to be fine. If there's more, there's more. And if he busts, it is what it is. It's tight end.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add to that, so I pretty much agree all the way around.
No, same. This is his 8th year. Like I said, I think like you said, he's just very consistent. I think he's been playing as long as I've been doing fantasy football, so I recognize the name. Um, I don't know. I've had him on a couple fantasy teams. I like him. I think, like you said, he's very consistent, and with the stats that he put up last year, um, obviously you want touchdowns more than you want yards and receptions and yada yada. And his average, the 6 touchdowns he did last year, I think is a good safe space to be in, especially for a tight end. Um, yeah, I think he's kind of looked over a lot of times. But yeah, I think he's a steady choice, and I like him. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been burned by him in the past in leagues, so I don't have this like preconditioned bias to not pick him up. I don't know if this at this point in the strategy of drafting I would get this far down there without having a tight end already. But it just really just depends on what you got. But I don't think you'd be unhappy with your choice if you had to pick up Njoku. So while we cover the top 10, we had an interesting comment in the chats that I'll bring up here, and this will be a first. So I'm playing with that one. So Cameron Bassett says, any outside of the top 10 that you would take a chance on? And so it's a great question because obviously, we have a 16-team division in our league. And yes, that is my father, so that means my dad's watching, which is awkward. But he is also a team in Fantasy Turf War. His interview hasn't been released yet, but he's volunteering with Service Dogs for Veterans. But he is one of the teams. So it is a good question of anybody outside the top 10 worth talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lauren.
Go ahead. Okay. I had a couple, so I know we're talking about the top 10, but I kind of looked past and I looked at tight ends that I've had in the past. I was like, I wonder how they're doing and what their stats are and yada yada. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, I hope Brock Bowers does so well. Anyway, but I think he'll be a great person to look and watch. Do I think I would choose him in out of the other top 10? No, but I might pick him up if he's doing well. But one that I would love to talk about is TJ Hockenson, if I'm saying that right. I had him last year, but I also had the combination of him and Josh Dobbs when he was playing. Oh my god, I can't think right now. Kirk Cousins got hurt. And they did so well together. But I don't know if that's the combination of Josh Dobbs and him, or it was just him by himself. But I knew that he favored Hawkinson. And I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of points that he put up, especially from picking him up kind of later in the season. Do I think I would take him over the other 10 that we've talked about? Probably not, but I think he is a very stable option. And I don't think he would disappoint you too much because he has enough experience, but as well as the fact that I think he will be decently targeted. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. Matt, you got any quick takes?
Yeah, so for Hockenson, he probably won't be back right away. He might not be ready for the start of the season, but he is somebody that is worth the stash, especially if he starts the season off on the pup. Just stash him on the IL because rookie quarterbacks love to target their tight ends. But the guy I'd probably target outside of the top 12 would be Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers because I look at what they got going on there, and just the upgraded quarterback from Pickens to now either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is fantastic. George Pickens is going to be a force, but Van Jefferson is going to be like the down the street, down the field threat. But then Pat Freiermuth is able to come in and just be the guy that comes on the under routes, Russell Wilson has had success with tight ends before. I think that the Muth, sorry, I'm stealing this nickname. It's is going to be, targeted pretty heavily and be the guy that I think can take over that target work and be the value that we're all looking for, and he'll cost you almost nothing. I think he's going up the board as like the tight end 15 at pick 129. So if you really missed the boat, or if you want a second one with some upside, with a floor at least to back you up on the riskier picks, I wouldn't mind snagging him. That's a pretty late pick, or just wait and just roll it out. And then if he doesn't pan out, we could stream all day long.
Yeah, and quick for me, I think just out of maybe manifesting it out there, Brock Bowers, all the Raiders. Look, Waller left. Waller the baller is gone. Someone's got to fill the void. Someone's got to put up the numbers, and I think they've got an offense built to do it. But time will tell. I'm not really too sure if that'll happen, but we'll see. So, but that would be who I put my money on. At that point in the draft, I'm just taking shots, and that's I'm going to go with my Raiders. So, all right. Well, on that note, I think we can hop over to Commissioner's Corner for just a couple minutes. I know we're running a little bit long here, but very quick on the updates for Fantasy Turf War. We are working hard over here to get the 64 teams locked in. We have a commitment to ourselves, which is just me yelling at my future self, to be done with the 64 teams by the end of next week. So hopefully by next Tuesday's show, we are locked in on all 64 teams. I do have one very exciting team that we just locked in literally right before I got on this call. So I'm going to wait until they actually fully register so I don't share it. But Matt knows, and I'll text you, Lauren. But it's a company I've been working with I've been a customer of for several years. That they just got off the phone with me, and they are very excited to be on board. So I'm happy about that. And other than that, interviews are rolling out every day, 2 p.m. Eastern. Every day except for Tuesday because we got the live show. I may try and switch it up to like an 8 a.m. release just to see if people want to listen to that on the morning commute. So we'll play with the times a little bit, but right now it's 2 p.m. Eastern. We have interviews every day for the next 4 weeks, I think, something like that. So we're getting there. But 64 teams by next week. That's the big news, and 500 views. Woo! All right. Lauren, you want to switch over to a wrap up?
All right, awesome. Yeah. All right. That's going to be it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you're following along on all of our social media platforms and sign up on the website because we do have 4 spots left. So please do that. We want to meet you. We want to play with you, and that would be awesome. So Matt, where can people find you?
You can find me at Matthew_on at X, Twitter, whatever we call it. You could also find me at wherever you may podcast at Locked On Fantasy Baseball. And, if you guys have any fantasy football questions, baseball questions, DM me on all platforms. I got you. And, guys, this is going to be a great league. Please check us out. It's going to be so much fun. And it's going to be a lot of great exposure for your business or whatever you want to share. So check us out.
All right. And Cory, you have any social medias or anything you want to shout out?
Socials and stuff. No, I'm at Cory Bassett NC on Twitter. Cory Bassett pretty much everywhere else. But yeah, we have 4 open spots. Well, I'm sorry, 3 open spots left because I did not get a chance to update the script before we started. So we're down to 3. So if you want to be in, now's the time. Get in now, and we'll sort it out. But all the fun starts next week with 64 teams locked in. So get in while you can. Otherwise, you got to wait a year, and then it gets harder next year because you got to make yourself worthy. So yeah, it's all good fun. Lauren, where can people find you?
Awesome. You can find me on Instagram. It's my full name, lauren.elizabeth.hill. You can find me on X, lhill716. And that is it. That is all. Be excellent to each other, be kind, and we will see you next week.
Woo.
Bye.
Go see Deadpool.
Peace.